Let's see here. Okay, got that. All right, so let's talk real quick about listing appointment. And we're going to start with the basics, and then I'm going to stop to see if you guys have any questions. So we're going to look at a general format, and then we're going to look at some specific tools and things that you will use like while you're doing that. So let's talk real quick about, let me share a screen with you guys. All right, can y'all see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things too that I want to hit on that's related to this, and I want to make, this is such a great lesson for an agent that's new in the business. Being prepared is so important, and always thinking 1 or 2 or 3 days ahead about what you have to do and being prepared for it is really important in this business. And so there are just some little tips that I want you guys to think about, because I know you've seen now, because like I know, I think Jason, you and Angela did open house yesterday. I know Angela, you wrote an offer a couple of weeks ago. Jason, you're getting ready to take a listing. So things start to happen, and it's always important to know, okay, if I'm going to, for example, let's just say if I'm an agent and I'm driving down south of town to go show a house. All right. Is there anything else that I need to do when I go down there when I'm going to go show a house? Is there an open house sign that I need to put up in that area of town? Is there a lot box that needs to be taken off of a house? I always want to be thinking of what else can I do when I'm out this way, right? Because what happens a lot of times is we'll be like, oh, I got to go show a house, out in Northport. So we'll go show a house, and then we'll get back to the office or get back home, and we'll realize, oh, well, man, I forgot there's an open house rider I needed to put on, and it's actually just 2 neighborhoods over from the house that I just showed. And so then we'll ride all the way back out there to put a name rider on, right? And so you always want to be thinking 3 or 4 days ahead in this business of, all right, what do I need to do today to prepare to make sure that I'm not scrambling, the day I have my listing appointment, or the day I do my open house, or the day I go show homes, right? So always make sure that you're thinking ahead. And what I would recommend too is go out and show go out and preview 2 or 3 vacant properties. Let me stop sharing because this is more just a quick tips. I would, if I were all of you guys, I would go ahead and go preview 2 or 3 vacant properties, and just go in MLS, look in an area and say, hey, I'd like to go look at these 3 properties, and just look at them yourself. You may not have a client that's looking for them, but that way what it does is it gives you a chance to where, hey, I'm going to go use my e-key, make sure I understand how that process works. And that way I've gotten comfortable getting in and out of a house, so that whenever it's time for a client for me to show, I've already gotten comfortable, right? So I would recommend just going out and finding some vacant properties to go look at, get familiar with that. And then the last thing I'll say about preparedness, which is really important, I used to do this as a new agent, somebody would call and they want to go see properties, and I wouldn't necessarily be very familiar with that area, so it got kind of awkward. Like we would be driving around to the different houses, and I wouldn't really know where to go. I'd be looking at my GPS, and it would be a little awkward, and then they would realize, man, he doesn't really know where the next house is. He's having to get on his GPS, and like it just created a little awkwardness because I wasn't really familiar with that route or the area, and that kind of, my professionalism and their confidence in me maybe took a little bit of a hit. So what I would encourage you guys to do, if you know you're going to be going and showing properties and you're not familiar, it's always good to go out the day before the morning and drive the route that you're going to go, right? So if you're going to go show a house in a neighborhood in Northport, and then another neighborhood in Northport, and then another neighborhood, and you're not quite sure, I would go out the day before and do that route, so that whenever you're with your clients, whether they're following you or whether they're in the car with you, you can be more focused on them and talking with them and building a relationship with them, and not as much more so about, okay, I got to make sure I can get to this house, and now I got to make sure I can get in the house, and all those technical little things. It's good to go ahead and practice and prepare for those, so that when it comes time for the game, you can focus more on the client and not as much on all the technical issues that go into it. Does that make sense? And I would say, guys, if you ever show condos, this is even more important, because condos can be an absolute nightmare to show, because there's all these different gate codes and the buildings are always out of, so if I'm ever going to show condos, I'm always going to go out the day before, and I'm going to make sure I know where every single unit is that I'm showing, so that I don't even have to think about it on the day. So just a quick tip, I always think 3 or 4 days ahead. What do you need to prepare for? What do you need to do, so that you're never scrambling at the last minute? And then definitely homework for all of you guys is go out and preview a couple of vacant properties. Just get the feel of going in properties, looking at them, open up lot boxes. It helps out. So, all right. So let's talk listing appointment. Let's see here. All right, so I've got my screen. Can y'all see my screen? So let's talk about the kind of the first steps of it. So if somebody calls you and they want you to sell their house, and they say, hey, I'm interested in putting my house on the market. There's 2 breakdowns that I have. One is pre-qualified, and 2 is the appointment. So the first one that we've talked about before is, if somebody calls you and they're ready to put their house on the market, or they want to list their house, you got to pre-qualify them first. So great, how soon are you looking to move? Okay, why are you moving and where do you want to move? And you want to kind of get an idea of their timetable and their motivation. You've got to know that first, right? And then a really good question to ask right now is, okay, well, great. So if we come out and we decide that, now's the right time to put your house on the market, and we put it on the market, if you receive the full price offer tomorrow, would you be ready to accept that offer and close in 30 days or less? Why do you think you should ask that question on the front end? What do you guys think? Why should I ask that question on the phone?
To make sure they're really ready to make that move. They're prepared in case you receive an offer. Yeah,
absolutely, Kimberly, because right now, let me just ask you guys, if a good price property goes on the market right now in this market, what's going to happen?
It picked up fast.
It's going to sell, right? And I'll tell you, it's happened to me before. I've gotten a house on the market, and all of a sudden we get an offer in, and they start backtracking. And what happened is they really weren't ready to sell their house. And so we've got to make sure they're really ready to sell their house. And so that's a really important question to ask before I go running out to their house. And if they say, well, no, I'm not sure, be like, okay, well, let's talk about that, right? Because like we've said in other classes, we're in a really competitive market right now. Most well-priced homes that are coming on the market are going to sell very quick. They're going to have multiple offers, so you got to be ready for that, right? The next pre-qualification question is, okay, awesome. Well, now who are going to be the decision makers in this process? And you want to make sure that all the decision makers are there when you go to the meeting. Why do y'all think that is important? Y'all got to give me a little help here. Why do y'all think that's important to know who the decision makers are and making sure that they're all there when you go out and meet with them?
So in case you need multiple signatures, or in case you need to know who is the person in command, the go-to person, you're only dealing with that one person if it's only the one, or if it's 2 people, like a husband and a wife, you're making sure that you're in contact with both of them, keeping them up to speed on everything, and making sure that you have the correct signatures in the process going forward. Yeah, Monica, thank you. That was awesome. Absolutely. So it helps to make sure you get everything taken care of, everybody on the same page, you get the signatures. And also, too, let's just say that they're the husband and wife are both the decision makers, and you only meet with the husband. And then later, the husband's going to go back and relay all that information to the wife. Who do you think will do a better job at communicating and selling this to the wife, the husband or you? What do you think? You as the real estate agent.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that all the major decision makers hear the information from us because we're the professional. We can communicate the CMA. We can communicate all those things. So we want to make sure, if at all possible, that all of the decision makers are there. So you're right, Monica. We can hey, let's go ahead and get everything signed off on. Y'all are all here. And then also, we want to be the one that's communicating to them, right? We don't want to rely on somebody communicating, third person because it's important that we get everybody there, right? And this goes to buyers or sellers, right? I mean, a lot of times you may have like a college student looking for a condo when in all reality, their parents are the decision makers. And so you want to make sure that you know who those people are, right? So pre-qualifying is really, really important to set yourself up for success before you go meet with them, right? If you just run out the door and don't pre-qualify, I mean, it's just going to be harder to have a more effective appointment. Okay, so the third thing is once you've identified their motivation, you've identified the urgency that, yeah, they're ready to sell now. You know who the decision makers are. The next thing you need to do is prepare. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but you want to make sure you go ahead and prepare all the paperwork that you prepare. You have all your marketing information ready to go, and you've also prepared your CMA or comparable market analysis. And that way you're able to show up and have everything ready for them to sign. So a couple quick tips that, we obviously use electronic signature platform Dotloop right now, and we will be using, I think we're going to be moving to DocuSign. All that to say is a lot of people, what they'll do for the listing appointment though, is they actually bring the paperwork there. Like they actually bring the physical paper to the listing appointment. Because it's just easier to get it signed on the spot as opposed to, hey, I'm going to send this paper to you electronically later. Like you want to get it signed then. And so what some agents have done is they'll actually have like 10 listing packets just sitting in their office. And it's already got all the listing paperwork. It's got highlighted everywhere where the seller needs to sign. They have their listing presentation in there. They've got everything they need. So literally if somebody calls them and said, hey, I want to list my house, they just grab one of those pre-made listing packets, fill out the information, put it on the listing agreement, and then they might, do a customer market analysis and put the CMA in there, and then they're out the door, right? And so it's just easy when you've got a stack of listing presentations and packets there so that you don't have to put one together every time, somebody wants to list their house, right? And another thing I'd recommend doing for preparing is make sure that you have all of the documents ready that they need to sign. So, and I'll show you guys in Dotloop in a second where to find all those. But the single seller agency, RECAD list in the listing agreement, and the seller net sheet, I want to make sure I've got all of those ready, all filled out and highlighted where they need to sign, so that literally in the appointment when they're ready to go, I just put it out and say, great, here's everywhere where you need to sign, and you can go over it real quick. The last thing you want to do when you're meeting with a seller in a listing appointment is sit there and fill out all the paperwork, and fill out their address and everything, while they're sitting there. That just takes up more time, right? So I want to have the listing agreement, everything filled out, ready to go. I want to have my listing presentation ready to go, CMA, everything ready to go before I walk in that door. All right. And normally what I'm going to do is on the front end, I'm going to make a seller net sheet. And if you do your CMA and okay, this property is probably going to need to be priced between $235 and $250. I mean, it's a given that it's going to need to be priced within these two. I'll normally go out with a pre-made seller net sheet that shows two scenarios. It'll say, hey, here's $235, here's $250. And so now we can lay those two scenarios in front of them when we get to it, so that they've already got those net sheets for kind of like the high end and the low end, right? I've already got all that done. I'm not having to calculate and do net sheets on the appointment. I've already got that done, right? So they can kind of have that information. So, all right. So let me ask you guys, that's the pre-qualifying phase. What are you hearing? What are you taking away so far just from like the pre-appointment setup? I want to hear a couple of takeaways. 4 questions.
like you said, it's good to be overly prepared going in. I do like the paperwork, like you said, having several packets already printed out. It makes it easier, it makes it quicker.
Yeah, saves a lot of time for sure. It's good, Jason. What else? Any other takeaways or questions on this? On the just the preparation?
Jason said what I was gonna say. Just make sure you're prepared. Make sure you take as much material as possible, so you won't have to be running back and forth and trying to keep up and catch everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And and once again, I think we'll hear this theme come up, Kimberly. I appreciate you saying that. The more we can be focused on people and on the relationship and less on the technical pieces of this, like the better we are, right? When we're in that listing appointment, when we're meeting with them about listing their home and we're, showing a buyer around, the more we can be focused on them and focused on the relationship and less worried about, okay, like, which do I need to fill this out right here? How do I turn on this street? How do I get here? The more we can like kind of have all of these things already done and on autopilot, the more we can be present with these people, and it just makes the appointment with them a lot better, right? So like anything we can do to set ourselves up for that is important. And you don't have to be an expert to do that. It's just taking time to prepare, right? So great. Is there any other questions or thoughts on this first part?
My takeaway is to make sure that your seller is actually ready to sell within 30 days if they get the offer, because I feel like that's very important as far as your time and your money, as far as your commission and what you're putting into this particular listing. If they're not actually ready to sell, if an offer comes in and you put all this time and work and effort in, that could have actually been going somewhere else.
Yeah, Monica, you nailed it, right? I mean, you start to see, I mean, these things take time. I mean, when you talk about preparing a CMA, doing all this, I mean, you may spend close to an hour just getting ready for this deal, meeting with these people. And so if they're not truly ready to sell, I mean, you've spun your wheels a lot for really nothing, right? And so, yeah, I think that's, especially in this market, that's really, really important to make sure that you know that. And hey, here's the deal. If they're not ready to sell now, it's not a big deal. Like, great, when are you ready? And then you can just continue to follow up with them. And then when it does come time for you to put in all that preparation, you can do it at the right time. So that's awesome. And then, hey, I will say this, guys. Let me throw this in there. This is really important. There may be somebody that says, hey, we're not sure, but we would like to know, see a market analysis so that then we could make a decision. And that's okay. Like, you may say, great, well, what I'll do is I will come out and I'm going to give you a market analysis, and then you can decide if you want to move forward or not, right? So but it's as long as we know that up front, right? And that's a really good script to get in front of a seller, to get in front of somebody that's thinking about selling is this. Maybe they're not sold on the fact that they want to list it or they want to list with you. So your script, the way I don't like to use the word sell, but the way you sell them on it is you do this. You say, great, well, I'm glad you're thinking about selling. Here's what I'll do for you. I'll prepare a market analysis. I'll put together everything so you can see, the value of your home, what it will probably sell for in the open market. I can show you what I do, what my plan is, how I market the property. We can look at numbers and the bottom line and everything, and I can show you all of that, and then you can make the decision on if you want to work with me and if you want to list it, right? So we take the pressure off of them, and that's more of how you get in front of. That's how there's somebody that's not quite sold on you or sold on listing their property. That's a way we can still get in front of them, right? So what we've been talking about so far is mainly somebody that, like, hey, they're calling you, they want you to come put their house on the market, right? So that's this scenario. The other scenario is you've got somebody that is thinking about listing, they haven't decided on the agent, And so your script is, hey, look, I'm not going to press you. Like, I'm just going to come and give you all the information so you know what that option looks like. And then, hey, if you choose to work with me, great, right? And so now, I mean, who's going to say no to that? Who's going to say no to letting you come out to their house and give them a full analysis? Does that make sense? And then it's our job to show them the value so that they will choose us, right? Do y'all have any questions on that? All right, great. Okay, so let's talk about the appointment. Now that we've gotten there, we're meeting with the people. And once again, I'm going to show you all some tools behind this. This is just the general structure first. So now we've got the appointment. So the first thing that we do is we go and knock on their front door. Always show up earlier on time, right? You always want to be on time. It's so important, right? And what we normally, in the program that a lot of our agents have been through called BOLD, is they train you, hey, you knock on the door and you just say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it's great to see you. We had an appointment today at 3 and it's 3 o'clock. And right away, they know that, you're on time, right? So this is an interview. So be on time, be early. So the next thing I normally have them do, and I've got this that I'm going to share with you in a second, is have them fill out the listing application sheet. So let me stop right here and show y'all if I can pull this thing up. Hold on one second. Let's see. All right. Let's share this with you guys. So let's talk about listing application for a second. Can y'all see my screen? Y'all give me a yes or a no.
I can.
All right. So this is something that I created back when I used to work with buyers and sellers. And this is by no means any type of board certified or KW certified document. This is just for you guys. I'm going to send this to you and then you guys can tweak it and play around with it. It probably needs to be updated a little bit. I want to give you a general idea of what this is. So what I did with the listing application is I determined all of the information that I would need to put that property on the market. So all the specs, information I need on their property in order to enter the property into the multiple listing system, because the multiple listing system is going to have a lot of required fields that we have to have certain information, right? So I want to make sure I leave that appointment with all of that information. I also, what I do is, just ask, hey, are you current on your mortgage payments? Have you ever, if any of your spouse ever declared bankruptcy? I have all of these things that I would want to know, right? And then and you can see talking about all these different age of the roof, type, all of this information, right? And then I say, what upgrades have you made to their home? And so what I do is when I go meet with them, I say, awesome. Well, hey, it's good to see you. Obviously, let me take a quick look around. I'd love to see your house. Now, there's two different ways that it can go. One is normally they're going to walk with you around the house and show you the house, and that's okay. What you could do is say, great, I'm going to take a quick walk around the house. If you could go ahead and fill this listing application, this is just some information that'll help me, best serve you. And we always want to get them to sit at the kitchen table, per se. We always want to say, hey, is it okay if we sit here on this kitchen table? Or maybe dining room table, I guess, but preferably kitchen table. Why do you think, why do we want to sit in there on the kitchen table? Why do you guys think?
More room, you can show things a little bit better.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. So guys, that's where decisions are made. All right. And normally, that's just the place where decisions are made. There's a different energy level. When guys, let me just tell you something. When you're sitting in somebody's den, everybody's in a recliner with a coffee table, it's just a different type of energy, and decisions are normally not made in that setting. All right. But whenever you're sitting with them around a kitchen table, it's a different energy, you're focused, and that's how you make decisions. Does that make sense? So when you go in the house, you really want to take control and just say, great, hey, awesome. Is it okay if we sit right here at this table, right? And you take control and sit there because that's where decisions are made. And so normally what I would do is say, all right, awesome. Well, hey, if y'all could fill this out real quick, this is just going to help me show how I can best serve you, give me the information some of the information that I need. I'm going to take a quick look around your house. And if they want to show it to you, that's fine. Most people are going to want to walk with you and give you the tour. I'll just give you a quick script, though, that they teach us in Bold, and that is, you can say, well, you know what, why don't, I can appreciate that, but what I want to do is I want to look at the house through the eyes of a buyer, because whenever the buyer walks through the house, they're actually not going to have you give them a tour. So I really want to see what it's going to be like for a buyer to walk through your house. And if they still insist on showing you the house, like, they can definitely walk around the house with you and show you the house. And a lot of our top agents still like walk through the house with their seller. So once again, I think it's great to do that. I just wanted to give y'all a little bit different like angle that you can take, right? But either way, you want them to fill out this thing, this listing application. I'm going to email this to you guys. And once again, I want to make sure you know this is not a standard template or format. Like, you need to go through and tweak this thing. The required fields in MLS have changed. But it's good to have this because a lot of times, guys, when we go out to an appointment, we're not always going to remember to ask everything that we need for MLS. I can't tell you how many times I would get back from a listing appointment and I would be ready to put the property in the multiple listing system. And I'd realize, oh man, like, I don't know what the type of material that's in the bathroom. I don't know the type of floors that are in the living room. And I'd have to go back and I'd have to call the seller and be like, hey, I'm putting your property in. Can you give me a little bit more information? And that just takes more time. So what I did is I decided, I found out, hey, what's all the information that I'm going to need to put the property in MLS? And I'm going to make sure I've got that in this listing application so I don't even have to think about it. It just happens. They fill it out, it's done, and then I can take it back into the market, back to the office and re-enter that in, right? And I don't have to worry if I've forgotten to ask something, right? So I'll send this to you guys, and then y'all can tweak it based on information that you would want or what the required fields in MLS are. And by the way, if somebody tells you they're not current on their mortgage payments or they declared bankruptcy, you want to clarify that a little bit, because if somebody has not been paying their mortgage, they could be at risk for foreclosure. And the last thing you want is for a house to go under foreclosure while you have it listed, because then the bank takes it over and you may not even be able to be the one that represents them. They may not even be able to sell it. So you want to make sure that you found out this information. So, hey, if they're not current on their mortgage payments, they need to find out what the status is with their bank before you put the property on the market. I've had people that have listed houses before, it's gone under foreclosure and somebody's wanted to buy it and the person can't even buy it because the bank's already taken it and they're doing their deal with it. So you want to make sure you ask the right questions. All right, so let's go back to, let's see here. All right, back to okay, so we talked about listing application. So the next thing is once we've looked at the house, we've revisited their motivation, we're making sure they're ready to sell, then what we do is we go over the CMA. And in that launch series that I sent you guys, there's a class that I taught about a month ago called Creating a Stellar CMA, where I know some of you were on it, but I spent about an hour talking about how to go into MLS and how to select the properties to use for your comparable market analysis. So definitely go back and look at that class, because that really there's a whole class on how to do a CMA, right? So dive into that, but you really want to put themselves in the shoes of the buyer, because when you go to meet with that seller, they have an idea in mind of what they want to get for their property. They've been living in their house. Their house may be worth more to them than it would be on the buyer on the street. Like they lived in their house and they think it's worth a certain amount. So what you've got to do in the CMA is you have to now put them in the shoes of the buyer, right? And so you've got to say, and like we talk about in the CMA class, all right, so Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want you to look at these 3 properties in your house. So these 3 properties down the street are all listed at $220. and they're all fully updated. They all have granite countertops. They all have new roofs. They're wonderful. And then Mr. and Mrs. Seller, your house right here, like we've already talked about, your kitchen, you would like to update it, but it still doesn't have the granite countertops. It needs new carpet, like we've talked about. And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're wanting to list your house for $250, and these other homes are listed for $230. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'll just ask you guys, if you put yourselves in the shoes of the buyer, and you're looking, and we pull up all these houses, and there's these 3 houses that are all fully updated for $230, and then there's your house for $250. If you're the buyer, which one of these properties are you going to choose? What do you think what's that seller going to say?
One of the updated homes at a lower price.
Okay. Why do you think that's important to get them to put them in the buyer's shoes and get them to look at it like that? Why is that important?
Because you want to have it at a fair market value. Otherwise, it'll be on the market for a long time, and he probably won't get the offer that he wants.
Yeah, they have to look at it through the eyes of the buyer, right? Because if they're just looking at it for how much they want to get for their house and how much they think their house is worth because they like it and it's been their home, well, that's probably not the right way to price it. But they can't argue with the fact that what a buyer would say, right? And we have to say, hey, the buyer determines the value, right? The buyer determines, I don't determine the market value. The seller doesn't determine the market value. The buyer does, right? So once again, that's just kind of the CMA portion, right? Somebody going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that you also want to give them a realistic expectation to go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And at least if they want to overprice it, you at least set the expectation what you thought, right? And what the market said. So absolutely, Monica. That's awesome. So once you go over CMA, then you hopefully can come to an agreed purchase price. And this is where you would go into the net sheet, because normally once you get to the CMA portion and you say, okay, well, great, we're going to list the house at 240. Then you can say, all right, let me get out my paper here. Here are 2 net sheets I've already prepared for you, 235 and 250. Here are the net sheets. This is going to be your bottom line number for each one. So now they can actually see what their bottom line number would be at these different values that we've been discussing, right? And we put that seller net sheet in front of them. And so now they're looking at a bottom line number, right? And so that's important to have, right? And it's important, once again, as you can see, guys, in this portion of the appointment, it's good to have already that filled out. We've got this momentum going. We've been talking about their motivation. We've been gotten the listing application. We're doing a CMA. The last thing we want to do here is now sit there idly for 7 minutes while I'm scribbling together and putting together a net sheet, right? We want to already have that ready so we can just put that in front of them, right? All right, so then hopefully we would come to an ideal, all right, agreed purchase price, okay? Once I've done that, then I can start going over the marketing plan. Okay, great. Well, now that we have decided on what we both agree would be a good price, let me show you now what we're going to do to really help sell your house, right? And this is where you go over your marketing plan. And you talk about, obviously everything from, we're going to put a sign in your yard, we're going to put the property in MLS. So can I give you guys something that is a really good script to use right now in this appointment? Do y'all have something to write with?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is gold. I want y'all to write this down. All right. So, and let's see if I can remember it correctly, because I haven't said this in a while. But this is what you can say. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, there are really 4 P's. 4 P's is selling real estate. Now, most agents do the first 3. So whenever most agents put a house on the market, what they do is they put a sign in the yard, they put it in MLS, and then they pray that somebody will come make an offer on it. But Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what I do is I do the 4th P, and I actually prospect. So I prospect and go out and look for buyers and sellers, buyers for your property. All right. So it's kind of funny, right? I mean, they'll laugh, but it's a good little script. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I believe that there's 4 P's to getting your house sold. And most agents only do the first 3. They put a sign in the yard, they put it in MLS, and they pray, right? And yet Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I do the 4th P, and that's prospect. I'm actually going to be prospecting for your buyers, for buyers for your house. And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, actually, if you ever want to see me do that, you can come to my office between 9 and 11, Monday through Friday, and you'll see me actively prospecting for buyers for your house. And oh, by the way, so if you ever need to get in touch with me between 9 and 11, just know that I'm actively prospecting for buyers for your house, and I'll definitely return your call after that. So let me ask you this. Between 9 and 11, what are we doing? What are we really doing that we're talking about? The first word starts with an L, the second word starts with a G. Anybody have any guesses?
Lead gen.
Yeah, it's lead gen, right? Lead generation, right? So we're setting the expectation that every day from 9 to 11, I'm going to be prospecting, right? So that's just a little script you can use to throw in, all right? So basically, I'm going to go over my marketing plan, and I'm going to show you guys in a second through Command where you can find a pre-made listing presentation that you can tweak to yourself. So you can go through and talk about, how it's going to go on a website. It's going to be on a mobile app. Maybe you're going to do, an open house, like all these different things. You can lay out what all you're going to do to get that property sold, right? So the next thing, once you go over that, is you're going to set expectations and action items on how they can make their house show ready. So once again, this is all about systems. So I want to have everything systematized as possible. I've got my listing application systematized. I'm going to have all that information by default because I'm handing it to them. They're going to fill it out. I don't even have to think about it. I'm going to get the same information every appointment without having to remember, right? So the same thing goes to this listing presentation. So on part of my listing presentation, I guarantee when I show you the one that's in Command, they're already going to have some set things that you can tweak, right? As a professional, I need to advise them on what they need to do in their home to make sure that it is show ready, right? And so I'm going to have this checklist of, all right, well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm so excited that we're going to get your house on the market. Here is a checklist of everything you need to have done before we put it on the market, right? I have a really high standard for my listings. And so, and it can be things from like, all right, pressure wash the driveway, take the weeds out, get your weeds out of the flower bed, freshen mulch if necessary, make sure and paint all your scuffed up, baseboards, right? Dust your fans, anything you can think of, declutter, right? Explain to what declutter. Make sure that you only have one pillow on the side of each couch. Make sure that you only have one picture frame on each, side table, right? I've seen guys, there's top agents that are very, very detailed in what they tell these people to do, and they have a very high standard for what those look like. It may be, hey, getting your carpet professionally cleaned, right? But you've got this same standard list for everybody, right? So that when you walk in a house, you're not going to remember, there may be 30 things that you want every single one of your sellers to do. You're not going to remember that off the hip every time you walk into a house, right? But you have it systematized to where in your presentation, you've got this checklist to where you can just hand it to them, and now they know what to do, right? And I know back when I used to, list properties, it's funny, I would just hand this to these guys and say, hey, all right, great. Well, I'm excited we're going to get your house on the market. Here's what you need to have done, right? And then a week later, they were like, all right, Nathan, we just got our driveway pressure washed. I'm like, oh, cool, that's awesome. Like, I didn't even remember telling them to do that. But, I had a system where it happened automatically, right, to where, every time I go in, they're going to get the same information. Now, some people may not have to do all of it. Some people may only have 2 little things that they need to do, but we have a system for what needs to happen, right? Because the top agents, the reason they're so good at selling properties is because like they know how to get that seller to do what it takes to get the property ready to show, right? If you go through a lot of top producers listings on MLS, you'll notice they all look really good, right? And so that's a standard that they set for their listings, right? And they're able to set that expectation. So that's really important to have that ready to go already in a listing presentation so that you don't have to go back over it and remember all of it every time you go out to the house, right? So set expectations. The next thing to do is set expectation on how and, sorry about the price. So, you know, chances are at some point you're going to take a listing where you think that you don't really agree on the price. You think it should be listed at $240 and they're intent on doing it at $255. And so if you think, if you're still want to list it for $255, you need to set the expectation that, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, just so you know, we've talked through this, and based on our conversation, you've already said that you don't think a buyer would be willing to pay this much, right? However, if you want to list it for $255, I'll list it for you. We'll list it at $255 on one condition, that if we don't have any showings for 2 weeks, then we're going to reduce the price by $10,000, and we're going to agree on that up front, right? Or hey, if you don't have any offers within the first 30 days, you know, we're going to reduce the price to this. So if you're going to take an overpriced listing, you want to make sure that there is an expectation that you're going to be reducing that price if there's not activity, right? You've got to set that expectation up front. Make sense? And then the next thing is you want to set the expectation on how and when you will be communicating with them throughout the process. So we talked about time blocking on your calendar. It may be every week. Let's just say every Friday morning or every Friday from 10 to 12 is the time where you touch base with all of your sellers, all of your listings, right? And that's good. So basically every Friday morning at 10, let's just say, you go through, you check your files, you know, you look at where everything is at, and you look at any showings and you notify them about any showings or interest, right? And you do that once a week. Now, the beauty of it is we have showing time now, which is a great tool through MLS that can do a lot of that communication for you, right? And definitely watch Jessica Leopard's showing time class in MLS. It's really, really good. She did it last month. And that just is a very, very high level view into how to utilize MLS and showing time. So definitely watch that. But you've got to communicate to them and set an expectation on how you're going to communicate, when you're going to be available. I mean, if you have young kids, maybe you need to tell them, hey, here's the deal, guys. Every day from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, I've got dinner time, bedtime, and bath time. So I will be available at after 7 o'clock from 7 to 8. If you need to reach me then, I'll be returning calls then, or obviously before that, right? So we've got to set expectations on when we're going to be communicating, how we're going to be communicating, and then when we're not going to be available. Why do you think that's important? Why is that important?
Because you don't want them to call during a time that you're not going to be available to discuss business with them.
Yep. Monica, that's great. Absolutely. And two, if they know that you're going to be calling them every single Friday morning with an update, are they going to get mad if they haven't heard from you by Wednesday?
No, they won't.
Right? No, they're like, oh, Nathan calls me on Fridays. But if we set no expectation and don't let them know when we're going to be touching base with them, and they don't hear from us Monday to Thursday, do you think they're going to think that we're just not touching? What do you think they're going to think?
You forgot about
it.
Right? And then they're going to be calling us. And like, Nathan, well, I hadn't heard from you this week. What's going on, man? Like, what's going on with our property? And you're like, there's nothing going on with your property. We hadn't had any showings this week. I mean, you wouldn't say that. And yet, if you don't set the expectations with your seller about when you're going to be contacting them and updating them, what are they supposed to do? They're going to be calling you, right? They're going to call you every night. Nathan, how's it going, man? What's going on with our property? All right, Nathan, what's going on? And they're going to call you all the time because you've never said you're going to be reaching out to them. And so now you're just opening yourself up to be called all the time, right? So you want to set expectations so that they're comfortable knowing when you're going to reach out to them, and then it puts them at ease, and they can sit back and they can do their thing and let you run your business, right? So setting those expectations is key, right? And if you've got somebody that's just ridiculous, very unrealistic, it's not always a bad thing to walk away from a listing, right? So, and then the last thing I'll say, setting yourself up for success, prepare a general listing presentation using the version and command designs, and you can, tweak it for each appointment. So once again, I would go ahead and kind of go back and just put together a listing packet so that you've got some of these things that we've talked about, so that now, like if somebody wants you to come look at their property, you just grab it, print it, and tweak it for that specific person. You've got it ready to go, right? So let's look at where some of these resources are. So I'm going to stop share with you guys for a second. All right. So first, let me just show y'all where the listing paperwork is. And once again, look at Nancy's contracts class, and that really goes into great detail on exactly all the X's and O's of how to fill it out. But so y'all can see my screen right here. Y'all see my screen? Somebody give me a yes or a no?
Yes.
Yes.
So basically go to, if you're at your MyKW login, so mykw.kw.com, you log in, the same information you'd use to log into command, and you just go to start my transaction, and then this is dot loop, right? And so what I could do is I could want to create a loop. So if I wanted to create a loop, I could create it for a certain property, or I could just go to templates, and now I could go to listing documents, right? And now I've got all the documents that I would need, right? I've got a seller estimated next sheet, right? So I've got all these different documents that I could use and play around with, all right? And I won't dive into the next sheet right now. I may do a quick video or class on the next sheet, just so you guys can have that, but I won't get into it right now just for time purposes. But just, these are all the listing documents. You got everything you would need in here, right, to print out to get listing documents. And definitely watch Nancy's contracts class, because that can, dig into the how and whatnot of filling out all of them. And here's the deal. I've already talked to some of you. I mean, if y'all are about to go on a listing appointment or you're going to go on one, call me or call Nancy, and then, fill the paperwork out, send it to us, let us look over it, and we'll make sure you've got it good before your appointment, right? So I definitely do not expect anybody to do all this on their own the first time. I mean, I just want you to have a general understanding so that you can, go ahead and do most of it on your own. But if you do have an appointment, make sure that you touch base with me or Nancy, and you can send the paperwork to us to make sure that it looks good and everything. So, so once again, that's where you would find the listing documents. And then I'm going to get into command real quick, and I want to show y'all. All right, so.
Hey, Nathan, while you're pulling that up, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely, Monica.
So I have a listing that I did actually take to the person, and we filled it out on hard copy paper instead of doing the electronic signature.
Sure.
I saw on there where it said that you can have that information scanned in. Who would be comfortable about getting that information scanned in when we come up to the office?
Yeah, you can actually do it. So Monica, great question. Yeah, so you can actually come, obviously you could scan it from anywhere, but if you don't have a scanner, you can just take that paper and come to the office and scan it in up here. You can scan it into one of the, you can scan it to your email, or you can scan it into a computer up here, whatever you want to do. And then when you go into dot loop, and you create a loop for that listing, you can actually upload those documents into that loop. So if you're in that dot loop, and once you've downloaded them to your email or computer, you can just go into that loop, and you can choose to upload documents, and you can actually upload all your listing documents into that loop that you got in your account, and then you can you got it in there. Does that make sense?
Well, that does make sense. I just don't know how to do it.
Okay. Yeah, well, if you want to, if you can just come up here and just ask Liz or Morgan, and they can help you do it the first time. So you can just come up here. They can make sure you're set up in the copier or the printer, they can help you scan it in, and then you just literally, I mean, when you're in dotloop, they can help you upload it the first time. If you want help with that, that's totally cool. So I would just say, yeah, let us know when you want to come up and just get it scanned in, and we can help you and make sure that you know how to do it the first time. So does that help?
Yeah, I mean, I have an idea of how to do it, but I wouldn't want to be in there fumbling around my first time. I just wanted to know, like, who could I ask that could assist me to make sure I'm doing it right, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely Morgan or Liz, either one of them. I mean, they'd be happy to show you how to do it on your first time if you need help with it, for sure. So let them know. Just say, hey, guys, I got a listing. I want to make sure I scan it in dotloop correctly, and just say, hey, when can I swing by the office? And they'll, I mean, they're normally pretty available to help you with that, for sure. So great question.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and congrats on the listing, Monica.
Thank you.
All right, so let me show y'all last thing. So now that we talked about command, we've talked about the listing presentation in here. So if I'm logging into KW command, I'm going to go down here to designs. All right, and by the way, if I click on the KW, all these are the little widgets, right? So I'm going to go down to designs. And now I'm just going to go to print. Actually, I'm going to go down here to the plus sign, create. And for our purposes, I'm going to go over here and say print. Now it's going to take me into the designs portion. So now this is awesome. I mean, you got this full marketing library. So you've got all these different topics over here, right? And by the way, I mean, this is a great marketing resource other than just listing presentations. But I'm going to click on listing over here, and I've got listing presentations. And they have already made me 2 different listing presentation templates. I think they're mainly the same information. They're just different graphics. So if I click on, I'm just going to click on this one. And this is awesome. So look at this. I've got all of these different, I've got this entire presentation here, right? It's got everything. Now, you may not want to use all of this information, right? You may not want to use all of it, but you can see like it automatically already has the process. So if you see this screen right here, it talks about the process of like from listing to close, right? It talks about the mobile app, right? It's already got all this in here. It talks about the mobile app. It talks about your custom marketing plan. So, and then you can tweak this. Finding your buyer. It talks about all that. It talks about your media plan, strategic promotion, what you're doing to promote the property. And a lot of these things are already in there that are things and tools that you have access to through the KW systems, right? If you want to do an open house, it's got an open house strategy in there. Details. And so this is really good because it talks a lot about, yard signs, door knocking. I mean, anything that you have on there. Let's see. It's got your numbers if you want to put those on there. It's got awards, portfolio. I'm trying to figure out. Let's see here. So yeah, I mean, I mean, you can use this and tweak it, take a bunch of pages out, but it's already there for you to use and tweak, right? And you can go in and you can edit this in designs, right? And then you can download the entire thing to like a desktop or whatnot if you wanted to print it out. Yeah, so I would encourage you guys to use this, put together a listing presentation that you've got to go out so that you can use it, when you're meeting with people. So any questions on this as far as putting together listing presentation? I'm gonna see if I can find one that I've downloaded. All right, what questions do you guys have? I've got just a couple more minutes and I've got to get to another call. Any questions that you guys have just from our call today? Y'all had some really good questions today.
No, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Let me just see if I can do something real quick. I was going to show y'all what this looked like on a desktop. Let's see. Oh, okay. Let's see here, hold on. Well, I was going to try to pull this thing up, but it's, let's see, it's kind of, okay, here we go. I'll just show y'all this real quick, and then we'll be done. Let's see here. All right, share screen. All right, can y'all see my screen real quick? Hold on.
Yeah.
All right, y'all see this? So this is basically what, I just downloaded that thing. And so this is what it looks like. And you can see it's a really, really beautiful listing presentation, you know, that you can create and download, right? And you can tweak it to however you like it. So, yeah. And I will send you guys, I'm going to send y'all a recording of this, as well as I'll send you the attachment for that listing application, also with the scripts and things, that document that we went over as well too, that just kind of talks about the format for the listing appointment. So, and once again, you know, this is a lot. I don't expect any of you guys to master this like right now. I want y'all to have a really good general understanding of the format. And then when it comes time for your first listing, like Monica, I know I talked with you. I mean, obviously, we want to be involved in that process. So, you know, if you need us to look over the paperwork or you have a question, I mean, just call me or call Nancy, because, you know, it really helps somebody to kind of walk beside you that first time just to make sure you got it all done right. So, awesome. Can y'all think of anything else? Cool. Well, I'm proud of y'all. Thank y'all for plugging in and asking really good questions today. If y'all need anything this week, let me know. I'm sure we'll be in touch. I hope y'all have an awesome Monday.
All right. Thank you.
You too.
Bye, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Bye.
Bye.